Welcome back to OtakuDaiKun. Dai here, and it's time to cover the lore of Fate Samurai Remnant. This is an awesome game with a lot of charm, and a wonderful addition to the Type Moon universe. It should go without saying, but this video will contain spoilers for the entirety of the story, so if that bothers you, the game's available right now for you to play, and I highly recommend it. My real motives here are to entice you into starting, and to provide you with a comprehensive, easy-to-access guide for all the game's lore. It's an overview analysis that presents the story with all of the twists and dramatic reveals out on the table from the get-go. Before we get started, I want to let you know about my partnership with Entertainment Earth, a brilliant site where you can buy all sorts of anime figures. Their selection is massive and constantly updating. If you use my affiliate link here, you'll get 10% off all in-stock items, as well as free US shipping for orders $79 and up. This time, I recommend this affordable pop-up parade of Mordred, and on the more expensive side, this figure of Skahak. You can find links to both items, as well as my general promotion, in the description below. Without further ado, let's dive into the lore. In general, Samurai Remnant tells the story of a Holy Grail war taking place during Japan's Edo period. Historically, this was the era following the Sengoku Jidai, or Warring States period, which was an especially violent and war-torn time. Those were the days of Oda Nobunaga and other warlords, all fighting for control of Japan in its feudal state. That period came to an end with the Battle of Sekigahara, in which Tokugawa Ieyasu emerged victorious and established dominance through the Tokugawa shogunate. He moved Japan's capital from Kyoto to Edo, the land that is now known as Tokyo. By comparison, the Edo period was far more peaceful. Conflict mainly occurred due to ronin, warriors left without a lord to serve. Without a place in society, many of them became thugs who thrived on theft and extortion. If you're like me, this premise should raise a glaring question. Were the Holy Grail Wars even around back then? Turns out they weren't. The Holy Grail Wars were established by the Ainsburn, Makiri, and Tosaka families around the year 1700. Samurai Remnant, however, takes place in the year 1651. How does that work? The key to this is Japan's most influential mystic, a monk named Abe no Seimei. He was the founding father of Onmyodo, a special kind of Japanese magecraft that specializes in divinations, astrological readings, and curses. For more information, definitely check out my lesson in magecraft on the topic. One of Abe no Seimei's many talents was clairvoyance, the ability to see the future. At one point, he foretold the coming of Fuyuki's Grail Wars and recorded his vision. One of his descendants, Tsuchimikado Yasuhiro, sought the Grail's power to restore the reputation of his lineage, and used Seimei's record to create his own Grail. This article, called the Waxing Moon, was at first only capable of summoning a single servant. Yasuhiro used it to summon a caster-class servant, who would then help him modify the Waxing Moon so that it could facilitate a full-on Grail war. What they wind up with is an expanded form of the Fuyuki Wars, which pit 7 masters and servants against each other. There are 2 major variants. First, servants in this war gain their power from channeling Edo's many flourishing mana ley lines. Second, a handful of rogue servants are summoned to especially rich locations across the map, known as spirit fonts. These servants have no masters, nor do they have a stake in the ritual. While they can travel Edo for brief moments at a time, they are only at their full strength within the territories they were summoned. So yeah, technically, this Waxing Moon ritual is the first Holy Grail War, but only because Abe no Seimei was able to see into the future, and his descendant copied what was supposed to be the first Grail War. It's important to note that this game's story isn't necessarily the same timeline as other Fate works. Given how this ritual could have shaped history, it's best we treat this like a separate timeline, such as Apocrypha or Strange Fake. By now, I'm pretty sure you're used to this sort of multiverse logic, right? In all, the Waxing Moon ritual has 7 masters, each with their own respective servant, and 9 other rogue servants for us to cover. The game's protagonist is a ronin named Miyamoto Iori. Born in a small port town, his family was killed in a raid by the Yagoro gang. Its leader liked kids, and took Iori on as a servant boy. This was never a safe arrangement, however, as the gang would certainly kill him as soon as they got bored. Luckily, the Yagoro gang, which consisted of 84 men, was wiped out in a single night by none other than Miyamoto Musashi. Musashi, or Shinmen Musashi no Kami Fujiwara no Harunobu, is arguably Japan's finest warrior and founder of the Niten Ichiryu School of Swordsmanship. Hoping to train a worthy opponent, Musashi adopted Iori and taught him the way of the sword. However, the world in which Musashi earned his fame has changed. The Edo was more peaceful, leading Musashi to lament that Iori was born in the wrong age. He passed away before imparting all of his knowledge. In some ways, the Edo period was a curse for Iori, who desperately yearned to succeed his master's style. The manslaying and bloodshed that Niten Ichiryu was built for is now discouraged. Regardless, Iori's primary goal in life is to better his swordsmanship. His craving to do battle is the only emotion he acknowledges, and all of his actions, even when he selflessly helps others, are only a means of understanding what he perceives as an opponent to defeat. Musashi's techniques were developed from his adoptive father's Toriryu. It is a style implementing 2 katana, a long sword in one hand and a short sword in the other. To fully master Niten Ichiryu, one must embody the ideals in Musashi's Book of 5 Rings, which is themed around the elements of earth, water, wind, and fire. Its final chapter, the Book of the Void, is the culmination of all of his teachings, the pinnacle of swordplay. In his youth, Iori would obsess over the Book of 5 Rings, but his pursuit was stunted by Musashi's death. However, hope was rekindled when Iori met one of Musashi's greatest rivals, the swordsman Kojiro Sasaki. In the past, Musashi and Kojiro dueled one another at Funajima in what was supposed to be a fight to the death. Musashi, who had fashioned crude wooden swords from sailing oars, won their bout by striking Kojiro in the head. In real-life history, it's believed that Kojiro Sasaki isn't even a real person, and even if he were, he was said to have died during this battle. Fate, or at least Samurai Remnant's timeline, vetoed both ideas. When Kojiro came to visit Musashi's grave, Iori begged to become his disciple. In doing so, Iori learned Kojiro's most deadly technique, Tsubame Gaeshi, or hidden sword, soaring swallow reversal. Devised as a means of slaying a fleeing swallow, it involves 3 consecutive slashes that occur simultaneously. It's a human technique that appears to achieve what mages consider to be on par with true magic. In Iori's case, by using 2 swords, he unleashes 6 simultaneous attacks. Thus, while his training under Musashi was incomplete, he augmented his skills with the help of another style. To further supplement his skills, Iori learned magecraft from a living grimoire named the Crimson Codex. This Western spellbook was crafted from the skin of a hippogriff and the soul of a mage who bound their soul to it. The Crimson Codex found its way into Musashi's possession, inspiring him to write the Book of Wind. After Musashi's death, Iori inherited the Crimson Codex, and it served as his magecraft teacher. Specifically, Iori learns jewel magecraft up to the point of casting flame spells. Iori has a foster sister named Kaya. She was initially adopted by Musashi, along with Iori, but after his death, she was then adopted by the Ogasawara samurai clan. Despite this, she continues to look after Iori at his run-down abode in the Edo district of Asakusa. She supports him as he lives a humble life, taking on odd jobs for the local government. This changes when he's suddenly attacked by one of the other masters, and in a desperate plea to live, he summons his saber servant, similar to how Shiro does in Stay Night. This servant is Yamato Takeru, an ancient Japanese prince described between 2 accounts, the Kojiki and Nihon Shoki. Takeru is a fictional hero created by fusing various historical accounts into one. First off, let's address the elephant in the room here. Officially, this saber is genderless, identifying as neither a man nor a woman. Historically, the character is a man, but other people in the story often assume they're female. This coincides with how Takeru once dressed as a woman in legend. Hentai tags, on the other hand, list Takeru as a boy, at least in terms of genitalia. At no point does Takeru ever confirm nor deny any kind of gender identity, instead just going with the flow. Nasu has apparently stated that he specifically wants the character to be this way, so I'll try to respect that. Takeru was born as the child of Emperor Keiko, who ruled over Japan's ethnic majority, the Yamato or Wajin people, during the 1st and early 2nd centuries. As a child, Takeru was raised to follow the emperor's orders in lieu of self-autonomy. Rather than playing with other boys and girls, they were passionately committed to the sword. Drama sparked when Takeru's older brother, Prince Oosu, incurred the wrath of their father. Oosu, who was tasked with bringing back 2 of the most beautiful women for his father, instead swapped them out for other women and kept what he thought were the most beautiful for himself. The tension between father and son caused Osu to avoid attending their dinner, disgracing the family. In turn, Takeru was ordered to reprimand him and interpreted this order by drawing their sword and slaying their older brother for the good of the kingdom. This caused the emperor to fear Takeru's bloodlust, sending them away on missions to keep them at a distance. They were exploited as a tool to slaughter those who opposed Yamato's rule. In one of these campaigns, Takeru dressed as a maidservant to infiltrate and assassinate a chieftain at Kumaso. Another opponent actually praised Takeru, giving them their namesake. To the east, Takeru met with their aunt, Yamato-hime no Mikoto, who was the high priest of Amaterasu. When they expressed sorrow for being exiled by the emperor, Yamato-hime gifted them a holy sword known as Ame no Murakumo no Tsurugi, later renamed to Kusanagi. This blade was forged from the tail of Yamata no Orochi, one of Japan's most fearsome creatures. Susanoo, god of the sea and storms, brought back the sword after fighting Orochi. It is a divine construct that combines the powers of heaven and earth. With the blade in hand, Takeru continued their journey, slaying countless political opponents as well as several ferocious gods. Their dedication to the sword and subsequent exile left Takeru in a state of solitude. This changed when they met a woman, Otatachibana Hime, who would breathe light into their life. She showered Takeru in boundless love and journeyed eastward with them as their wife. Finally, Takeru's life had purpose beyond endless slaughter and vowed to use their swordsmanship to protect her. In turn, she harbored the same sentiment, willing to do whatever it took to save her beloved. This came to a head when the two of them reached the Sea of Hashirimizu. There, Takeru's exploits angered a different sea god named Watatsumi. In its rage, Watatsumi conjured a torrential storm that threatened the two lovers. So that Takeru could survive, Otatachibana Hime cast herself into the water as a sacrifice to calm the angry god. Mourning her death, Takeru continued on their path of conquest until reaching Mount Ibuki. At this time, they met their demise while fighting the Oni Ibuki Doji. They incurred a fatal dose of poison and met with an untimely end. It is said that their soul took the form of a white swan that flew through the distant sky. Scholars have often compared Takeru's legend to that of King Arthur, which might explain their visual similarities. That, or it's just Takeuchi doing what Takeuchi does best. In this Grail War, Takeru claims to have no desire of their own, instead fighting to prevent the Grail from falling into evil hands. This aligns with Iori's goal, to protect the peaceful Edo period for Kaya's sake. Thanks to their loving wife, Takeru found appreciation in many things that Iori takes for granted, such as delicious food. In a very fortunate twist, it seems Iori's summoning was unintentionally a chain summon. Put simply, both Takeru and Otatachibana Hime were summoned as a pair of sorts. In order to manifest, Otatachibana Hime uses Kaya as her vessel, appearing at times to help and comfort her beloved. This is the sort of thing a servant like Rama desperately wants, but can never have. As a servant, Takeru uses a skill called Divine Water to conceal their blade in an aquatic sheath. Much like Artoria's invisible air, this is so they can hide their true identity. When that's no longer an issue, Takeru can invoke their noble phantasm, special technique, 8 Current Raging Storm, which is honestly just a Japanese Excalibur. No joke, their animations are exactly the same. Next, I think it's most relevant to shift our focus to the master Tsuchimikado Yasuhiro. As I've already explained, he's the one who started this war using Abe no Seimei's records. Back during Abe's time, onmyoji, or practitioners of onmyodo, were influential in the government, but that status has declined significantly. The once prestigious Tsuchimikado lineage has fallen into relative poverty. Even though Yasuhiro is more well-off than a commoner, he yearns for the Holy Grail to restore his family's glory. Until he achieves that, he is stuck with an inferiority complex, one that his servant thinks will motivate him in the war. Yasuhiro has gotten the shogunate's support in the ritual, falsely promising them the waxing moon's wish-granting potential. He declares himself the ritual's observer, while trying to hide that he in fact is a participant. Never trust the Grail War's overseer. His caster servant is Hieda no Are, a scholar who was tasked with memorizing various literary texts so that they could be compiled into the Kojiki. This is the same work that Takeru Yamato is from, making it seem as though Hieda is actually the one who created Takeru. That said, he insists that he is not an author. His writings are considered records, and to that end, he wants the waxing moon so that he can store in his mind all the records of the world. Dude wants to be a human Wikipedia, basically. He refutes the concept of mystery altogether, claiming that things like magecraft and gods are merely illusions brought about through the human mind. Thus, if he gets his wish, mystery will be proven a lie and no longer exist. He's a caster who's about as anti-mage as you can possibly get. Naturally, this means he can't use spells like a normal caster. Instead, he relies on his noble phantasm, Puppet Playground, which imposes a reality marble based on his mental landscape. Servants caught within struggle to maintain their strength, suppressed by the idea that their abilities are merely fiction. When absolutely desperate, Hieda can call upon Yaso Magatsuhi, a god of calamity recorded in the Kojiki. It's a big-ass dragon that really drains his energy. Next is the Master Yui Shosetsu. In December of 1637, an army of Japanese peasants rose up to promote Christianity, which was outlawed at the time. Its leader was Amakusa Shiro Tokisada, who plays a key role in Fate Apocrypha. His followers were mostly victims of poverty and famine, who found salvation in Christian teachings. When the Matsukura clan tried to stop this, a rebellion began to brew. This was known as the Shimabara Rebellion, which tragically ended in the massacre of around 37,000 rebels. One of the few survivors was a man named Mori Soiken, and after studying magecraft in China, he returned to Japan and constructed a homunculus using Einsburn techniques. This artificial life form was Yui Shosetsu, and she was raised to embody her creator's ideology. Even in this supposedly peaceful Edo period, people are still suffering. Every new era likes to consider itself an improvement, but if you look at stories like Rurouni Kenshin that take place around the Meiji Restoration, it's clear that Japan was plagued with famine and bloodshed even under the shogunate. Hoping to make the world a better place, Yui started serving the shogunate as a military scholar. Her military training academy gave purpose to many struggling ronin. Unfortunately, homunculi tend to have limited lifespans, and by the time of the waxing moon ritual, her body is on the verge of expiring. Through her connections, she becomes one of the masters, secretly wishing to use the waxing moon to overthrow the shogunate and end Japan's suffering. This sentiment is much like Kiritsugu's, relying on the Grail as a miracle to instill peace. Her servant is the rider Minamoto no Raiko, or more accurately, Ushi Gozen. She was the daughter of Minamoto no Mitsunaka, but also the heaven-sent child of Gozu Tenno, the ox-head heavenly king and Japanese variant of the Hindu god Indra. She and her 4 heavenly kings went on to protect Japan from demonic threats, such as the Oni of Mount Oe and the giant spider Tsuchigumo. Before this, however, she was known as the monstrous Ushi Gozen, a byproduct of her being the child and avatar of Indra. Eventually, Raiko was able to seal this chaotic part of herself away, but during her teenage years, she served her father as a slayer of both man and beast. The servant that Yui summons is the raw essence of Ushi Gozen pretending to be Raiko by taking on her teenage form. Of course, Yui thinks this is regular Raiko, and so while the two of them wish to fix Japan's corruption, Ushi Gozen envisions that the only way to fix it is through destruction. In accordance with Yui's wish, Ushi Gozen spends most of the war wearing an imposing set of armor. While it heavily resembles the Setsu armor kimono that Raiko and her kings used in life, Ushi Gozen loathes it and is delighted when she can finally show herself. Her blade is the Dojigiri Yasutsuna, the same one Raiko used to assault Mount Oe. Despite this, she is classified as a rider, occasionally using her mount, Kyogoku, which was Raiko's chosen horse. Her noble phantasm is Ox King Reversal, Frenzied Tempest, a manifestation of Gozu Tenno's might. This massive ox oni grows larger and stronger in proportion to the strength of Edo's ley lines. While this ox king roams, she herself dons a set of mechanical spider legs. While we're on the topic of Japan's corruption, I should cover Chiemon, the master of Lancer in this war. I mentioned the Shimabara Rebellion. Well, Chiemon is another one of its survivors. He was a child during that time, and when the Matsukura clan opposed the rebels, his family was forced into starvation. He was malnourished, never having a proper meal. During the carnage, his mother was captured by soldiers, and his father was killed while trying to protect him. The ordeal left him all alone, covered in burns and scars, and yet he did whatever it took to survive. Like Shiro in Stay Night, Chiemon has survivor's guilt. He eats to stay alive, but it's torture, with each bite making him wonder why he's alive when others died. he doesn't feel like he deserves it. Thus, in this supposedly peaceful era, Chiemon seeks the Grail to literally open the gates of hell, whose flames will avenge him and, through destruction, unite him with his deceased family. He is similar to Iori in that, deep down, they both reject this era's peace. Iori tries to suppress these feelings, incurring Chiemon's resentment. In the aftermath of the Shimabara Rebellion, he learned magecraft from Mori Soiken, the same man who created Yui Shosetsu. In another similarity to Iori, Chiemon specializes in flame spells. It's fitting then that Chiemon, who basks in flames of hatred, would summon the Lancer servant Jeanne d'Arc Alter. In life, Jeanne d'Arc was a commoner who, upon hearing what she believed to be the cries of God, took to the battlefield to liberate Orléans during France's 100 Years' War. Famously, after being captured by English forces, she was put on trial for acts of heresy and burned at the stake. In Fate Grand Order, we are introduced to a version of Jeanne d'Arc Alter created from her ally, Gilles de Rais. That Jalter is a furious avenger who, unlike her proper form, cannot forgive the church for her execution. In the Waxing Moon ritual, the Jeanne that's summoned takes on an alter form due to the hatred in Chiemon's heart. She is a tainted Jeanne with weakened abilities. Her compassion is still present, but she expresses it through the same cynicism as her master, pledging to do whatever it takes to realize his destructive wish. Despite her sincere empathy, Chiemon refuses to be pitied. He doesn't want her to try and save him, he simply needs her to help obtain the Waxing Moon. Whether he succeeds or fails, he will suffer, and Jeanne understands that all too well. In lieu of her flag, Luminosité Éternelle, and the sword of Saint Catherine, she utilizes a pair of spears. She has 3 different noble phantasms. The first is Flamme Étranger, or Fallen Foreign Flames. It is a masochistic technique that unleashes the flames of her execution on both herself and the enemy. Due to its capacity for destruction, she refuses to use it unless Chiemon forces her to via command spell. Her more common attack, then, is Tristes de la Vierge, Our Lady of Sorrows. It is a weaker, inverted form of proper Jeanne's Luminosité Éternelle. By gathering the death and grief of the battlefield, her spears launch dark shockwaves. Her ultimate attack is La Pucelle, the Crimson Holy Maiden, a suicidal move based on her tragic sacrifice. Via command spell, Chiemon can use this attack himself, though doing so will kill him instead. Beyond her defilement, Jeanne d'Arc also lacks the boost in fame that comes from being a Japanese hero. Another participant who is like a fish out of water is Dorothea Coyette, the Master of Assassin. She is the daughter of Swedish nobleman Frederick Coyette and is the mage successor to her family. Affiliated with the Clock Tower, she joins the war while traveling to Japan with her father. Unlike the other masters, she's come prepared with an entire galleon of men from the Dutch East India Company, including soldiers, other mages, and even her personal retainer Giovanni. While she aims to win the war, she doesn't plan on dying even if she loses. This is merely one step in her path as a mage. That said, she also has a strong sense of noblesse oblige and refuses to allow innocent bystanders to come to harm. Her family owns many domains and assets, while she herself wields powerful magecraft. Because of her high standing, she has no qualms ordering a servant around in the war. Despite this, she has arachnophobia. Luckily, her servant is more associated with snakes. The ritual's proper assassin is Koga Saburo, an important figure in the written anthology Suwa Engi. Born to the Koga Mochizuki clan, he was the youngest of 3 brothers. Due to his prowess as a warrior, his father gave him special treatment, such as arranging a marriage with the beautiful Princess Kasuga. This drew the envy of his siblings, who conspired to trap him in a mountainous cavern. Accounts of this story vary, but for fate, Saburo was tricked into trespassing on Mount Ibuki. There, he destroyed a serpent's nest that was passed down through his bloodline. This incurred the wrath of Yamata no Orochi, who cursed him with unusual snake powers. In order to escape the mountain, Saburo was forced to travel through the underworld below. It is said that this underworld cavern took him through the reverse side of the world. Yearning to see his wife again, Saburo learned to survive in this cavern long enough to reach the surface. He emerged a demon, but was eventually able to maintain his human form through mysticism. He founded the Koga School of Ninjutsu, with his direct descendant being Mochizuki Chiyome, who we see in Fate Grand Order. She inherits his Orochi curse. As a servant, Saburo's legend manifests in an ability to conjure and control phantom snakes. His noble phantasm is Incarnation, Ibuki Daimyojin Engi, through which he transforms into a serpentine monstrosity covered in Yamata no Orochi's scales. For as intimidating as he appears, Saburo is actually a gentleman, respecting Dorothea as his master. She reminds him of his younger self. Next, let's discuss Zheng Chenggong, the Master of Archer. He is a general serving the Longwu Emperor of the Southern Ming Dynasty in China. His Chinese father, Zhen Jilong, and Japanese mother, Tago Amatsu, helped raise the Prince of Tang to become Ming's emperor. In honor of that, Zheng Chenggong was given the imperial name Koshinga. At the time of Samurai Remnant, the Ming Dynasty is at war with the Qing. In this endeavor, Chenggong is willing to do anything he can to preserve military order. He even murdered his own cousin for the troops and land to do so. Despite this, the Ming was still in danger, and to secure aid, Chenggong traveled to Japan to speak with Tokugawa Yorinobu. Rather than sending reinforcements to China, Yorinobu allowed Chenggong to compete in the Waxing Moon ritual, which could surely prevent the fall of Ming. For the war, Yorinobu has provided a lavish manor in Akasaka, situated atop a spirit font. This is helpful because, in addition to fighting with a staff, Chenggong practices magecraft, specializing in the creation of mystic codes. Appropriately, the servant he summons is Zhou Yu, one of the greatest heroes from China's Three Kingdoms period. This was arranged without a catalyst, which is a testament to their compatibility. He's an interesting case where, historically, he was an actual general for China's Eastern Han Dynasty. Much of his legends, however, come from the embellished Romance of the Three Kingdoms story. As a result, Zhou Yu as a servant is a mix of his historical self adorned with powers based in fantasy. He is most famous for participation in the Battle of Red Cliffs, also known as the Battle of Chirbi. In it, he fought against the naval forces of General Cao Cao and claimed victory. A critical strategy in this fight was intentionally setting ships ablaze, sending them in to ignite enemy vessels. He was loyal to the Sun family, befriending his brother-in-law Sun Ce. His life's goal was to continue his service, but was unable to do so when illness killed him prematurely. Luckily, his wish to serve is granted a second wind through the Waxing Moon ritual. Initially, Zheng Chenggong and Zhou Yu were on guard around each other, a result of them both being wise generals. However, over delightful food and fine wine, the two saw each other as fellow humans whose trust could lead them to victory. In battle, all of Zhou Yu's attacks are themed around the Battle of Red Cliffs. His arrows are set ablaze, and both his noble phantasms invoke fire as well. In Fire Ship Afloat, Hellfire Ship roaring across the Yangtze, he sails out on a lone warship and fires an arrow into the sky, triggering a rain of explosive arrows to scatter atop his enemies. More potent is his reality marble, Red Cliff Calamity, Cradle of Fire, which imposes the red cliffs on his surroundings. It turns the area into a fiery hellscape. This can turn almost any fight in his favor, but first requires restraining his enemies before the reality marble can envelop them. Bizarrely, as an added bonus, Zhou Yu is able to manifest one of his boats as an airship that floats about the battlefield. Our final master in this war is OtakuDaiKun. Yoshiwara is Edo's famous pleasure district, filled with brothels and beautiful courtesans who tend to their male guests. The highest-ranking courtesans earn the title of Dayu, meaning that OtakuDaiKun is practically a matriarch within this industry, working out of the brothel Miuraya. She cares deeply for her courtesan peers, most of whom came to Yoshiwara to avoid poverty. It is generally not a profession of choice, but one of necessity. Takao hopes to save these girls, so even though she doesn't know any magecraft, she made a deal with Tsuchimikado Yasuhiro. By acting as his subordinate, helping him from the shadows, she is gifted command spells. Even with them, she lacked the knowledge to summon a servant. Instead of a formal ritual, her commands activate while trying to save one of the courtesans from a violent guest. The one to answer her call is the berserker servant Miyamoto Musashi. This is the same female Musashi we encounter throughout Fate Grand Order. She is not the Musashi from this world's history, but rather one who comes from a world in which Musashi was born a woman. Due to this, her teacher, Shinmen Munisai, abandoned her. Despite this, she went on to achieve much of the same feats as her proper historical counterpart, including the mentorship of her own version of Iori. This Musashi bears a set of mystic eyes known as Heavenly Eyes. They grant her the ability to see all the outcomes of a fight and focus on a single, inevitable outcome. This vision of alternate possibilities is akin to seeing other worlds, and by extension, she accidentally slipped into one of these other worlds. She is described as a mobile singularity, an anomaly that can journey across timelines through portals. While she wants to return to her original world, it no longer exists, so she instead embarks on a pilgrimage to harness her skills to the next level, the perfect realization of the void. Without FGO spoilers, it's safe to say that Musashi is drawn to the world of Samurai Remnant chronologically before she visits the Olympus Lost Belt. Normally, she manifests as a saber, but this time around she's a berserker. It is Iori's presence in this era that compels her to emerge. Being a berserker renders many servants completely irrational and unintelligible, but Musashi is way easier to handle by comparison. She's just itching to battle all the other servants, and happily aids Takao in the ritual. Her noble phantasm is 6 realms, 5 rings, the divine figure of Kurikara. It is a sword technique that slashes destiny itself with enough power to spawn a Neo in her wake. If you didn't know, the Neo are wrathful, muscular guardians of the Buddha. They use physical force to ward off evil. As a traveler between worlds, Musashi aims to eat her favorite food, udon, in every destination she arrives at. Each time is a bit different, and she's delighted to chow down on Yoshiwara's noodles, even though servants don't need to eat. This comforts Takao, who feels that enjoying a meal is a sign of one's humanity. That does it for the 7 master-servant pairs, but there are still 8 different rogue servants who were more or less summoned because Yasuhiro and his servant couldn't quite duplicate the ritual perfectly. The first I want to talk about is the rogue berserker. This dude is Samson, a figure from the Book of Judges in the Old Testament. His story is set within the conflict between Israel and Philistia. He was born as an Israelite hero to his parents, who initially couldn't conceive a child. The angel of the Lord came to this couple and gave them instructions to follow so that they could birth a powerful son who would liberate their people. After giving up alcohol and unclean foods, the wife was able to deliver Samson to the world. Dude's like a Hebrew Heracles, blessed with tremendous strength. He can slay a lion barehanded, although Nero brags about doing the very same thing. Wielding the jawbone of a donkey, he wiped out a full army of Philistines. I don't want to imagine that bar brawl. Some dudes break a beer bottle, and he breaks the face off a donkey. I'm only kidding. Samson was gifted this power, but only so long as he adhered to being a Nazirite, a sacred person of abstinence. The most important condition was that he never cut his long hair, else his divine strength vanish. The crux of Samson's legend is that he fell in love with a Philistine woman named Delilah. He adored and trusted this woman, not knowing she was tasked with discovering his weakness. In confidence, Samson revealed the secret of his hair, and overnight, Delilah cut it off, robbing him of the power to liberate Israel. The Philistines captured, blinded, and enslaved him. Eventually, the Philistines took him to the temple of Dagon, and as they celebrated his downfall, he gave one final prayer to God, asking for his strength back. His prayer was answered, giving him enough strength to massacre the temple, the Philistines, and himself. Despite this, he surprisingly wishes to forgive Delilah for her betrayal. However, since she is no longer around, he hopes that as a servant he can find someone else to forgive. He manifests in Yoshiwara, where he meets OtakuDaiKun. She reminds him of Delilah, and so he devotes himself to her, protecting the region from other servants. His noble phantasm is Samson Agonistes. I am the champion of contrition. It is the same blessing God had given him in life, and it's constantly active. Once again, though, it only lasts so long as he keeps his hair long. Next is Tamamo Arya, one of the Tamamo 9. Tamamo no Mae, being a divided spirit of Amaterasu, takes the form of a 9-tailed fox. Her main incarnation only has one of these tails, and the other 8 manifest as separate alter ego servants. So far, we've met Tamamo Cat in Fate Grand Order, and we know the names of a few others, such as Tamamo Vich. It's worth noting that FGO's Koyenskaya is not actually one of the Tamamo 9, and is instead only borrowing the Saint Graph. Arya is the rogue rider servant, and rather than riding on a standard mount, she prefers to ride on a special someone. Oh my. She isn't a fighter, so we never actually see this. That said, she is exceptional at manipulating others by adjusting her behavior to their demeanor. Trust her, and she'll be trustworthy. fear her and she'll become fearsome. Luckily, she takes a liking to Iori, and his chill attitude keeps her so chill that fans think she's high all the time. Her profile completely lacks a noble phantasm, and instead, she uses the skill Cursed Lair, Bright Sunshine, to support her allies and charm her enemies. She was summoned to Ueno, but seems to have little trouble visiting Iori and Asakusa. In very Tamamo fashion, she is attracted to the concept of being a loving housewife and starts studying under Kaya to make Iori a home-cooked dinner. Rogue Saber takes us back to the Heian period's Genpei War, during which the Minamoto and Taira clans fought for control over Japan. An important warrior of the time was Minamoto no Yoshinaka, or Kiso Yoshinaka. He claimed victory in the Battle of Kurikara, which turned the war in the Minamoto clan's favor. To win, he employed two novel strategies. He used a great many white banners to create the illusion that his army was much bigger than it actually was. Through a surprise attack, he unleashed a herd of oxen down the pass with torches tied to their horns. Taking advantage of the chaos, he overwhelmed the Taira forces, chasing them into a decisive ambush. Upon claiming Kyoto, he took on the position of Asahi Shogun, only to be betrayed by his cousin, Minamoto no Yoritomo. If you happen to recall the story of Ushi Wakamaru, you'll know Yoritomo was her brother, and he used her to fight his dirty battles. Under Yoritomo's orders, Ushiwaka and Minamoto no Noriyori fought and killed Yoshinaka in the Battle of Awazu. Beyond his military prowess, Yoshinaka is known for befriending and later taking on Tomoe Gozen as his concubine. When Tomoe developed the horns of an Oni, Yoshinaka did not fear her. She eventually bore him a son, Asahina Yoshihide. The very moment he was summoned to the waxing moon ritual, Yoshinaka could sense the presence of an evil ogre, that being Ushi Gozen. While he should be tethered to his spirit font, he ventures wherever he can to hunt down and defeat Ushi Gozen. He has two noble phantasms, one being Om Aralik Svaha, which invokes a mantra of the love he shares with Tomoe. By calling upon the Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, he empowers his sword with gleaming sunlight. His other noble phantasm is Press the Attack, Kurikara Pass, which manifests the flaming bowls he used in the battle. The rest of these servants are folks we've already met in previous Fate works. Arjuna, for instance, is the rogue archer. He's the central hero in the Indian epic Mahabharata, who battled with his rival Karna. Born as the son of both the king of Kuru and the thunder god Indra, he and his 4 Pandava brothers fought in the Kurukshetra war. His noble phantasm is Pashupata, raised hand of the destruction god, a divine construct that judges and delivers moksha to his enemies, which is a kind of enlightenment through death. Rogue assassin is Li Xuan in his older years. In life, he was a Baji Chuan master, famous for a technique that would kill his opponents in a single strike. This made him suitable for killing, and was just as much of an assassin as a martial artist. His pursuit of strength shifted from raw violence to strength of conviction as he got older, but ultimately, he died when the family of one of his victims poisoned him. As a servant, he is summoned to Kanda, where Yui Shosetsu has set up camp. Admiring Yui's wish of bringing peace, he decides to help guard the region. Through combat, he is able to tell that Iori harbors a darker side that yearns for strength, much like he once did. His noble phantasm is No Second Strike, the very technique he mastered in life. It is a blow that causes immense circulatory shock by engulfing the enemy in chi energy. The rogue caster is Circe, the witch from Greek mythology, most famous for her appearance in Homer's Odyssey. She is both the daughter of the sun god Helios and aunt to Medea. She resided on Aeaea Island, concocting various magical drugs. These could transform her enemies into animals, most notably pigs. In the case of the sea god Glaucus, she became jealous and turned Glaucus's lover into the monster Scylla. When Odysseus stopped by her island on his way home to Ithaca, Circe tricked him and his men with poisoned wheat porridge, transforming them into swine. Odysseus was able to resist this magic with the help of Hermes, which impressed Circe. After falling in love with him, she hoped he would stay, but upon his departure, she gave him advice on how to proceed. For this war, Circe was summoned to Koishikawa and cautiously protects the district from invaders by, you guessed it, turning them into pigs. Her noble phantasm is Medable Piglets, Forbidden Revelry, a reality marble that traps her foes at a banquet. Calling upon an army of pigs, she stampedes them through the hall, also transforming her enemy into a pig for good measure. The rogue lancer is Cuchulainn, and he's exactly as you remember him, right down to his silly running in Heaven's Feel. He is Ireland's Child of Light, the brave Ulster warrior who fought to the bitter end against Queen Maeve's army. He trained under Skahak in the Land of Shadows, mastering his deadly spear, the Gay Bolg. This weapon, carved from the skull of the Beast of Billows, Curid, is his noble phantasm that distorts cause and effect to guarantee a strike to the heart. As if remembering the events of Stay Night, Ku can sense a threatening aura from our final rogue servant, Gilgamesh. Even though the Waxing Moon ritual doesn't pit two teams of masters against each other, like the Great Grail War of Apocrypha, its bizarre conception allows for a ruler class to be summoned. Rulers are meant to observe the balance of the war, to keep it both fair and safe to the public. Being the legendary king of heroes from Mesopotamian mythology, Gilgamesh finds the Waxing Moon trite and ignores his duties in order to try running a textile shop in Asakusa. He cleverly names this wholesale shop Babylonia, while arrogantly treating Iori and his servant as his own personal retainers. If you complete all of his side quests, he offers you the formal option of joining him as an underling, and if you accept the offer, you unlock a secret ending where Iori and Takeru travel Japan as his entourage. Refuse his offer, and you'll be forced to fight him as the game's only super boss. Fitting then that he gets everyone to call him boss. Aside from a few interactions, he's basically comic relief. Now that I've thoroughly spoiled everyone's identities, let the Waxing Moon ritual commence. As I mentioned earlier, our story begins with Miyamoto Iori being targeted by Ushi Gozen for possessing command spells. He struggles to hold his own, and when Yui Shosetsu goes in for the kill, Iori's desire to live summons Takeru Yamato, and unknowingly, Ota Tachibana Hime into Kaya's body. Takeru defends their master, but the party is crashed by Chiemon and John Alter. Iori notices how the fight is setting the town on fire, and to prevent even more damage, he invokes a command spell to have Takeru hold back with their noble phantasm. Even at half-mast, Takeru's attack chases off the enemy and puts out the flames. Yui was originally planning to put Iori out of his misery, but now that he's a proper master, she will fight him fair and square. It is her code of honor, one that Ushi Gozen only pretends to respect. Takeru refuses to reveal their identity to Iori, as it could put them in danger. Thus, he calls them Saber, but we'll use their true name. Caillou meets Takeru and immediately mistakes them for Iori's new lover. The Crimson Codex interrupts, expressing the importance of fortifying Iori's house as a mage workshop. That'll help them put up a bounded field for protection, among other things. Out in public, Takeru learns that, unlike in their time, senseless killing is relatively uncommon. Iori and Takeru make their way to Yoshiwara and meet OtakuDaiKun. Even though Samson's not her direct servant, she sicks him on us. Musashi joins the fray and duels Iori, but the two of them instantly recognize each other. Musashi may be a woman in this case, but there's no mistaking that swordplay. She's delighted to meet her pupil in this world, and calls off the battle. Takao is more knowledgeable on the war than Iori, and invites him to her brothel to discuss a joint strategy. In exchange for info on the Waxing Moon ritual, Takao asks Iori to report whatever he discovers about the other masters and servants. Right now, our only lead is Yui Shosetsu and her servant Ryder. There's also Jean, but on her end there are no clues. Looking into Yui brings Iori to Ueno, where he meets and befriends Tamamo Aria. She wants to keep Iori, but settles for friendship instead. Heading back to Asakusa, Iori visits Gilgamesh's shop, which has just opened up. He tasks us with bringing him rare valuables to sell, and while Takeru hates the guy, they put up with it for the money to eat more delicious rice. When Iori and Takeru reach Koishikawa, they're attacked by Jean once again, but their fight is quickly interrupted by a swarm of invading snakes. They are the work of Koga Saburo, and his arrival leads to a four-way brawl. Takeru fights Jean, while Musashi comes to help Iori deal with Saburo. Adding to the chaos, Yoshinaka comes riding in and takes Takeru's side against Jean. Outnumbered, Chiemon uses a command spell, ordering Jean to unleash her Fallen Four in flames. This attack targets Yoshinaka, and before it can spread to Iori, Joyu enters the fray, flying in on his floating warship. He hops down and captures Iori and Takeru, taking them all the way back to Akasaka. There, Zheng Chenggong proposes an alliance with Iori, revealing his servant's true name as a sign of trust. Needing all the help we can get, Iori accepts, and is given a mystic code that lets him communicate with Chenggong remotely. It's impressive stuff, creating holograms that look more appropriate in a sci-fi. By working together, the two parties can explore separate regions of Edo and report back to each other. The next morning, Takeru takes an interest in Iori's swordplay, imitating his technique to better understand their master. Iori wants to keep Kaya out of the fighting, but she's too stubborn to back down. He reluctantly fills Kaya in on the details, entrusting her to watch over his workshop while he explores Edo. Upon tailing a group of suspicious foreign sailors, a fight breaks out, and Kuhullen drops in looking for a challenge. Iori and Takeru impress him, and in exchange for the intense duel, Ku pledges to help out when needed. The sailor's trail leads Iori to Shinagawa, where he encounters Dorothea. This is her territory, but because Iori hasn't learned she's a master, she lets him go without conflict. Iori tries to report back to Yoshiwara, but Samson takes his job as a guard too seriously. After being chased away, Iori and Takeru investigate deeper into Shinagawa to interrogate the sailors. One of them spills that Dorothea, Assassin's master, is located in Yokosuka. On the way there, Iori is attacked by sea monsters, and Arjuna falsely assumes Iori is the one summoning them. After some fighting, Arjuna learns that this is not the case, and as an apology, vows to aid Iori. Iori also encounters Li Shuen, who backs off after a brief tussle. All of these distractions lead Iori to settle down for the night. As he sleeps, Takeru grabs 2 wooden swords and sneaks off into the forest to practice Niten Ichiryu. In life, they saw swordsmanship as a means of killing, but now they have fun in pursuit of new techniques. Finally at Yokosuka, they board Dorothea's ship and are assaulted by giant snakes that burst out from the water. It becomes an all-out brawl when Zheng Chenggong and Zhou Yu come to help. As they fight off the snakes, Ushi Gozen sneaks in and targets Dorothea and Saburo. Overwhelmed, Iori is bit by one of the snakes, incurring a deadly poison. Despite his own health, he insists that Takeru prioritize fighting off the Orochi snake to keep it from attacking innocent villagers. Luckily, slaying godlike monsters is Takeru's specialty, and to finish it off, Takeru finally unleashes their noble phantasm. After Takeru rushes Iori back to the workshop, Yoshinaka arrives and fails to defeat Ushigozen. That night, Takeru entrusts Iori to Kaya's care, but senses light coming from his house. They peek inside and find that Otatachibana Hime has taken control of Kaya and is using a healing spell on Iori's wound. Back in Kanda, where Yui Shosetsu operates, we learn that she and Ushigozen have a temporary alliance with Chiemon and Jean. Using a mystic code, she confirms the appearance of a new servant, sensing that Otatachibana has finally awakened in Kaya. She shares this information with Chiemon. In the morning, Iori has fully recovered and decides to train in the forest to learn a new stance of Niten Ichiryu. It takes all day, but he finally learns the fire stance. By watching from the sidelines, Takeru can tell that the more Iori masters his style, the more it seems he's throwing away his kindness. Iori clarifies that he has no kindness, not intrinsically anyway. Adapting to the peaceful Edo period is simply a means of understanding his opponent. It's a part of his strategy to get stronger. With knowledge of a new servant, Chiemon attacks Iori's workshop and in the ensuing chaos, kidnaps Kaya. Chenggong and Musashi show up to help, but by then it's too late. The three decide to split up and search for Kaya in different districts. Your choice as the player determines where you start first, but it doesn't alter the overall story. Iori finds Yoshinaka in Todoroki and learns that Yoshinaka's main goal is to slay the evil ogre. He doesn't know that Rider is Ushigozen, but he can sense the malice seeping from her. So long as their goals align, he offers to aid Iori, starting off by mentioning Chiemon and Jean had ventured to Kanagawa port. There, Iori finds Kaya unharmed, but just as they're about to take her back, Kuhullen attacks them. He's supposed to be their ally, tied to his own territory, but now he's ravenous with possessed eyes. We soon learn that this is Tsuchimikado Yasuhiro's doing. By messing with the waxing moon, he is able to manipulate and control the other servants. Feeling bad about kidnapping Kaya, Jean helps Iori escape by fighting Ku herself. Regrettably, Ku isn't the only servant being controlled. Most of the rogue servants have fallen under Yasuhiro's spell. Among them, Samson is the most troublesome. He was already berserk, and the spell has caused him to rampage. Zhou Yu decides to subdue Samson, antagonizing and capturing him within Red Cliff Calamity. While it destroys Kanagawa Port, Joyu is able to quell Samson and return him to Yoshiwara. Turns out, OtakuDaiKun, who is working for Yasuhiro, is fully aware of his control over Samson. She knows she can't trust Yasuhiro, but feels it's a necessary risk in order to protect her fellow courtesans. Even if she can't win the war using Musashi, she hopes to use her charm and deception to have Yasuhiro grant her wish. The next morning, Iori and Takeru realize that, of the rogue servants, Gilgamesh wasn't caught in the spell. He is the boss, after all. He informs them that there's another rogue servant who was able to resist the spell, that being Circe. Iori goes to visit her in Koishikawa, and before they can have a proper conversation, Circe uses her porridge, or kikeon, to turn him into a pig. Fortunately, the cure is simple, and after a little scavenger hunt, Iori's back to normal. Circe declares that this was a trial, and since Iori's passed, she agrees to help him. Up till this point, Yasuhiro's spell was incomplete. By nightfall, though, he perfects it, so that it can control not just the rogue servants, but also the main ones. The spell tries to take control of Takeru, and in an emergency response, Iori gets the Crimson Codex's help in entering Takeru's mind. Inside, Iori can see that Takeru has been reduced to only their bloodlust, but Iori recalls the dreams he's been having about Takeru's life. He calls them by their true name, waking them from the spell. Now that things are safe, Takeru seeks penance for attacking their master, so Iori decides to headbutt them and move forward. No harm, no foul. Saburo, on the other hand, is not so loyal. He tells Dorothea that while the spell is trying to control him, he can resist it. However, instead of doing so, he uses this as an opportunity to test his master. He allows the spell to take over, tasking Dorothea with stopping him. Joyu is neither a mage nor divine, but he does his best to hold back the spell so that Zheng Chenggong can flee. Regardless, Joyu's flames burn Akasaka to the ground. Rather than see the destruction spread, Chenggong teams up with Iori and Takeru to defeat the rampaging archer. Unlike with Takeru, it is now too late to try and dive into Joyu's mind. For as strong as Joyu's reality marble is, Takeru's specialty is water, allowing them to claim victory. Not even command spells can reverse Yasuhiro's control, but through sheer force of will, Joyu takes an arrow to his neck to stop rampaging. Despite losing his servant, Chenggong is relieved that he can still grieve a fallen friend. Through his own means, he vows to return to China and protect his kingdom. Dorothea hopes to free her servant. If not, she will put him down herself. She's not too stubborn to team up with Iori, though. Together, the group discovers Yui Shosetsu being injured by her own servant. In truth, this is a ruse. Not only can Yui's homunculus body heal quickly from wounds, but Ushi-Gozen is also strong enough to resist the spell. By blending in with the other controlled servants, the pair hopes to defeat Yasuhiro covertly. Iori has no idea of this, and instead takes the wounded Yui to his workshop. Musashi is safe from the spell due to her partnership with Takao, but Samson isn't. He goes on yet another rampage, which saddens Takao due to how he's been protecting Yoshiwara all this time. She'd like to bring him peace, and sends Musashi in pursuit. Unlike the other participants, Musashi and Takao know of Samson's weakness. Thus, Musashi distracts him in battle, while Takao sneaks behind and severs Samson's hair with a dagger. Once again, he has been betrayed, but not out of malice. Takeru delivers a killing blow, and on his deathbed, Samson chooses to forgive Takao, as he always wished. He extends his arm, as if holding an umbrella to shelter her from the rain. With a sincere thank you, he disappears. Because of this, Takao gives up her claim for the waxing moon, instead ordering Musashi to act of her own volition. Koga Saburo is the next to show himself. When he starts attacking innocent villagers, Dorothea steps up to oppose him. She lures Saburo away from the village to settle their dispute. It's at this point where the player gets to make a critical choice that decides the ending. We can either follow Dorothea and help her slay Saburo, or we can focus on defeating Yasuhiro. Let's start with the latter, nicknamed the Rat Route. Thus far, Minamoto no Yoshinaka has avoided being controlled. When he learns that Ushi-Gozen is supposedly under Yasuhiro's spell, Yoshinaka chooses to aid us in invading Kaneji. Only then does Yoshinaka fall for the spell and tries to kill Iori and Takeru. We fend him off, and to solve two problems simultaneously, Takeru brings Yoshinaka to his senses by shattering his sword, which ricochets into Yasuhiro. It doesn't kill him, but the moment he gets cocky, Chiemon makes his move. Jean Alter rushes in and finishes the job. As he dies, Yasuhiro calls out to Rider, aka Ushigozen, but she was never really his pawn. With Yasuhiro's death, the spell is cancelled, returning freedom to the surviving servants. It's not shown directly in this route, but his servant, Hieda no Are, vanishes without a master to maintain his form. Chiemon and Jean flee into the night. The war is nearing its end, which distresses Takeru. They've begun to cherish their bond with Iori, and tears up knowing that their time is limited. Even so, Takeru aims to put an end to the war by destroying the waxing moon. Now that they've had the chance to reunite with their beloved wife, their conviction is even clearer. Takeru's sword is one meant to protect, not kill. Since we chose not to help Dorothea, she wound up dying to put down her own servant. Refusing to let others get hurt, she took responsibility by sacrificing herself. After healing up, Yui Shosetsu reunites with her servant and claims the waxing moon's vessel. It still needs the mana from fallen servants to grant a wish, so Yui seeks to fill it by slaying the remaining participants. This means breaking her treaty with Chiemon. At Kanda, Iori and Takeru fight against Yui and her servant. Takeru delivers a slash that strips away Ushigozen's armor, revealing her for who she truly is. Yui is horrified to learn that her servant wasn't Raiko, but rather her demonic counterpart. To bring about untold destruction, Ushigozen uses her noble phantasm, Ox King Reversal, to call down a massive Oni. The only way to defeat this behemoth is to cut off its access to Edo's mana ley lines. Teaming up, Musashi, Iori, Yui, and Chiemon each target key spirit fonts to weaken the Ox. Fulfilling his purpose, Yoshinaka arrives and uses his Alex Vaha to finish it off. Takeru then performs their noble phantasm to trash Ushi Spider Legs and put her down. Having used all of the strength in the fight, Yoshinaka vanishes. Dorothea's men discover that Yui Shosetsu is a homunculus and plan to bring her to the clock tower as a means of concealing mystery, as if the giant ox in the sky didn't already expose magecraft to the world. Now that Takao has bowed out of the war, and the Grail seems within grasp, Musashi requests a duel to the death against her student. Takeru finds this unreasonable. If she dies, she merely passes on to her next world, but for Iori, it'll be the end of everything. Nonetheless, Iori wants this duel just as badly. Their battle seems to be one-sided given that Musashi is a servant, but she has no idea that Iori mastered the Tsubame Gaeshi. He whips it out, successfully overcoming his own teacher, although she jokingly mocks him for using an outside technique. Now all that's left is to destroy the Grail. Crimson Codex warns that you can't just slash at the thing without unleashing its stored energy. Boy, if only someone could have warned Kiritsugu about the same thing. However, they can destroy the Grail safely if Codex first merges with it. Of course, that means they'd have to kill him too, but he agrees to the task for what it means. He's been alive for so many years as it is. Before this merge can occur, however, Chiemon launches a surprise attack and steals the Grail for himself. Once again, he has Jean take Kaya hostage to stop Takeru from opposing them. Finally realizing his dream of vengeance, Chiemon invades Edo Castle, igniting it in flames from the Grail sludge. While Iori and Takeru also breach the castle, they fail to stop Chiemon from fusing with the Grail to become a horrific monster. Absorbing both Kaya and Jean, he crawls through a gate to hell, serving as the final boss of this route, the Flames of Resentment. Using his remaining command spells, Iori charges up Takeru's Noble Phantasm, which slays the monster and releases its captives. Chiemon dies beneath the full moon, and with the Grail's demise, both Takeru and Jean disappear. The story ends with Iori taking a slumbering Kaya back home. For the second ending, A Ray of Light, we instead need to aid Dorothea in her fight with Saburo. It's called the Snake Route. By choosing to pursue the snake, Iori gets to mention to Yui Shosetsu that he hopes to destroy the Grail, in turn preserving the era's peace. Yui also wants peace, but feels she needs the Grail to achieve it. They have different means, but ultimately the same goal. Takeru defeats Saburo, as their sword came from the very Orochi that Saburo derives power from. This time, Dorothea survives the encounter and reluctantly gives up on the Grail. Turns out, even without our involvement, Tsuchimi Kado Yasuhiro is defeated. With both Chiemon and Ushigozen at his throat, it was inevitable. The main difference is that Hieda no Are refuses to vanish, instead feeding on people's souls long enough to reach Gen Chenggong. Hieda offers to form a contract with Chenggong, getting them back in the war. This makes me wonder why neither Chenggong nor Dorothea thought to form a pact with one of the rogue servants. Perhaps that was impossible. Regardless, Chenggong has no intention of rejoining the battle. That is, until Hieda starts to provoke him. Based on his past records, Hieda predicts that the Ming will fall without the Grail interfering. Afraid of this, Chenggong breaks, accepting the deal. Regardless of which route you're on, Iori will still take the fight to Yui and Ushigozen. Their battle against the giant ox remains the same aside from two key differences. First, in their attempt to cut off the ley lines, Jean gets struck by lightning and becomes unable to continue fighting. Second, rather than Yoshinaka helping in the battle, it is Dorothea and her ship's cannons that come to our aid. The duel against Musashi is also the exact same in all of the routes. Things diverge once more the moment Iori chooses to destroy the waxing moon. Like before, Chiemon launches a surprise attack, but Yui jumps in the way and absorbs the hit. Without his servant to back him up, Chiemon flees. Having lost, Yui decides to help Iori with his goal, even though it's not quite what she wanted. Rather than Chiemon and Jean, our main goal here is Chenggong and Hieda. They invade Iori's workshop and steal the waxing moon. We pursue them to the port of Akasaka, where Hieda tries to break Takeru's resolve. As the one responsible for preserving Takeru's legend, he feels he can deprive them of power. At first, this doesn't work, not until he invokes his puppet playground. Even in a realm devoid of mystery, however, Takeru is able to break free and maintain their independence. It's as if they're redefining their own legend. As a last resort, Chenggong uses a command spell, allowing Hieda to summon Yaso Magatsuhi. Yui joins Iori and Takeru as they take it down, and the longer the fight persists, the more it drains Chenggong's mana. Fortunately, Takeru wipes out both the dragon and Hieda before it saps all of Chenggong's strength. Unfortunately, Yui Shosetsu passes on, spending her last moment basking in the light of Iori's visage. Yet again, the Grail is no more, leaving both Chenggong and Dorothea without their coveted prize. They lick each other's wounds a bit, metaphorically speaking, and decide to achieve their goals the hard way. Interestingly, in our history, Chenggong would fight and defeat Dorothea's father in the siege of Fort Zealandia. Whether that happens in Samurai Remnant is unknown. It's quite possible Chenggong and Dorothea develop enough of a bond to prevent that battle altogether. You can get either one of those endings on a first playthrough, but the third one, Entreat the Darkness, is only available via New Game Plus. It can be accessed from either the rat or snake routes, and appears as an option for Iori not to destroy the Grail. All it takes is for Iori to consider using the Grail to awaken his inner bloodlust. This is what Chiemon's been waiting for, but now he's absolutely terrified and runs off on his own. Outside, Chiemon encounters Hieda, who is yet to vanish. Foolishly, Chiemon attempts to finish Hieda off without the help of his servant and loses his left hand in the fight. While he may have lost, Chiemon goes out with a bang, channeling Jean's La Pucelle through his command spell. The flames incinerate Hieda, while at the same time claiming Chiemon's life. Jean, who is either in the middle of kidnapping Kaya or weakened from lightning, vanishes without being able to save her master. At least he is at peace through death. Nobody is around to interfere, so Iori explains that he'd like to use the vessel in opposition of what he's been fighting for this whole time. Having been born in a peaceful era, he can't possibly satisfy his pursuit of strength and wishes to have the Grail bring about eternal conflict. Naturally, Takeru refuses to comply, so the two of them step outside. The final battle now has you controlling Iori against Takeru. If you're on the snake route, Yui watches from afar, her hopes for Iori forever crushed. Despite you winning the fight in the game, the cutscene proceeds with Takeru landing the last strike. For as much as Iori spoke of his kind demeanor being a tactic to understand opponents, it is Takeru who understands Iori the best. Using the very same technique they learned from him, Takeru dodges Iori's strike and runs him through. Somehow, Iori is satisfied by this. Takeru, on the other hand, is sad to have lost a friend. Following through on their conviction, Takeru slices open the Grail that Crimson Codex had merged with. This ends the ritual, causing Takeru to vanish. All that remains is Iori's bloodied corpse, which Kaya finds at daybreak. I was hella surprised the devs had such a tragic ending lined up. Considering this is the hardest ending to get, and that you need to beat the game twice, some might think to call it the true ending. As a Fate fan, though, I've long since cast away the notion of a true ending in the Nasuverse. Everything is a separate timeline, so take your pick as to which one you prefer. I suppose the happiest one is A Ray of Light, which lets Dorothea live. Sure, Yui dies, but her life was about to expire anyway. 'Tis a cruel fate. I might choose to share my thoughts on the game's mechanics in a separate video, but for now, that's all there is to Samurai Remnant's lore. The game has a season pass planned, and if there's any additional story DLC worth covering, I may revisit the topic. Until then, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks for watching.
If you enjoy this channel, help us grow by liking, commenting, sharing the video, subscribing to OtakuDaiKun, and
most of all, smashing that notification bell so you don't miss out on all our anime lore, discussions, and Let's Play content.
you can support us directly through Patreon, Subscribestar, or a YouTube membership, all of which come with benefits like spicy exclusive vids and early access.
As always, celebrate your fandom. I want to give a special shout out to all my $10 and up supporters: VideoGamer75, Dante Pendragon, Stephen Elak, Samuel Gersten, The Nonchalant Ostrich, Otaku Mom, Jens Bauman, Mystic Samurai 1983, Lord Omagoden, Freebrick, Olympian Doll, Alexis Yukio Gomez Yamato, Link Pendrago, Observer Bellis, James Hewitt, Uncanny EXP, King Kobo, Scout, Andre Foster, Jared Kraus, Zamas Autonomous, Yukie Eros, Crow Kalem, Saul Soto, Sogai CH, Caitlin P, Vladimirovna, The Taz 96, Kengo X 77, Alester Bernadotte, Mickey D 343, and Akakaze Yume. Thank you all so much.